Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. To some of you and peace out to the rest of you. You already know who it is and who it ain't. It ain't your boy and it is your man, the blackest hearted, blackest minded, blackest man on social media, signing black in and shining again, asking you to hit the mother cuss word share button because the message is more important than the messenger. Rawan saw fit, Rawan Malik, a commentator of mine, saw fit to correct me, so to speak. And this was underneath my last upload about weaponizing the language barrier. Now, I want to give a shout out to Abdullah Amariki as well. Assalamu alaikum to both of you, to Rawan and to Abdullah Al-Amariki. Abdullah, I think we've agreed actually, because I use Malcolm as an example of a balance in the way that we can speak to masses of people. Now, how you speak to your friends, of course, is you all's business, but how we speak to masses and audiences comprised of those we don't know could best be done exemplifying Malcolm, because what Malcolm did was sound like an educated man and still sound like a black man. When he spoke, similar to Muhammad Ali, although Malcolm was more eloquent, Malcolm sounded exactly like an educated, eloquent black man from a North American English-speaking nation, which is cool. This is exactly a good balance for us to start with. People are going to sound individually different, but that is a good balance for him and for us. So I do believe that when we have a particular street slang, well, it's up to the guys on the street if they're going to have their own slang. It's not up to me to tell them to have it or not have it. It's just simply up to me to say, well, look, if I'm not from the streets, or let's say from your streets, then I won't understand certain things. And I don't mean any harm, but some things you simply won't be able to say only your way. There were certain things that were said only in the few Gulf Coast towns within my local calling area when I was growing up. And therefore, if someone moved from elsewhere, we may not know right off the bat that they moved, but there will be certain things we just knew they wouldn't understand till we told them what it meant. We couldn't just repeat it 3 times and think, oh, they're going to understand it, because they always hear it. At some point, it's just going to have to be presented in a context. Either a picture is going to have to be shown, or we're going to have to explain it in formal English, or let's say common English, or we're going to have to if they speak another language, we'd have to tell them what the slang means in another one. At some point, it's going to have to be explained. Now, in a nutshell, though, I do believe that Malcolm avoided the 2 extremes. One extreme, of course, is to sound ignorant, which you're right. I knew that before I left the States, I realized that there was a type of ignorance that was being promoted to where, you almost had to not even make sense. And Kevin Hart did this in a comedy routine once, where this guy was saying is like, I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And he said, yeah. And Kevin was talking about how confused he was. And I would agree with Kevin, because the man was hardly saying anything at all. And we do have that problem. Some people speak and all they say is, like, you know, and that's not eloquent. It's confusing after a while. What I've noticed in the States is that, frankly, a lot of attractive women talk like that because they can. They're not required to be clear and explain much in many cases. And they get the more the subject is about what they're looking for in men and why they act the way towards men they do, the less clear they get. And I take issue with it. In any case, hell, the more important the topic is, the less clear they tend to get. I noticed that back in the 90s, and I haven't seen much of a change in it when I've gone back to visit the States. Now, getting back to Rawan Malik, you decided to correct me, somewhat sun me, and I'll go ahead and read what you said. Actually, Sayyara, who doesn't mean his Sayyara, means his car, and people shouldn't accommodate for you in their land. Kuwait accent is similar to Fusha, and the way you talk about your students is disgusting and vindictive. We don't need you to teach us our language, and we should have a superiority complex about our language and have pride in it, because it's the first and original most expressive language, and dialects are part of it. And by the way, there's many words to demonstrate the difference between catch and hold. I will teach you one. Catch, iltaqat. hold, MSIC. Try learning better. Okay? Now, Meta 4 Ace O dot, you said hour. Stop paying for English classes, brother. Stay where you are. Thank you for taking my back on this one. And to be fair, Meta Ace, or Meta 4 Ace, to be fair, the citizens in Kuwait and in other Gulf countries don't have to actually pay for English lessons going through university, or at least maybe the first year of university. After that point, they may have to pay. But going through the first year of university, at least, they're free. If they choose to major or specialize in language and translation, then they get more English classes for free because their education is free. And that's a good thing. That's actually a pretty good system. I admire that. You corrected Rawan Malik about misspelling our as A-R-E-R, and he fixed it. And because Rawan Malik took your correction without rancor, I'm going to accept correction from Rawan Malik without rancor. And when I say rancor, Rawan, I mean hostility. Not necessarily hatred, but it does mean hostility. I'm going to accept your correction, Rawan, without hostility when it comes to the language. And yes, of course, your language is rich. It may have one of the most extensive vocabularies in the world. So I agree that catch and hold can be differentiated between the two in Arabic. I do agree that they can be. The point I'm making to Rawan is that what I expressed, my mistake in calling sayar without any ending to be vehicle, was based on what people had taught me. My mistakes in Arabic when I speak it are based on what I have learned, not even from non-Arabs, because I don't let them teach me Arabic, but from Arabic speakers. There was a time for about 2 months when I first landed, and I was saying stuff like, mafi kasser, it's not broken, because that's how they taught me. And I found out later on, someone said to me, that's broken. And that's how I know that's how I knew you spoke English. And I said, wait a minute, but I didn't use English with you. You used it with me. And you're right, I do speak it. It's my first language. And what they said was, well, see, if you don't speak Arabic, then you either speak Hindi, Urdu, or you speak English. Those are the ones that we would use. And you weren't dressed like someone that speaks Urdu or Hindi. You don't necessarily look like them. So it was English that was left. I said, okay, fair enough. Now, get this, Rawan. You see, I accept correction in Arabic because it is your language. And if you tell it to me, I'm going to practice it and try to remember it. Emsik is hold. Iltaqat is the command form for catch. Thank you. And I mean that from the bottom of my black heart and the depth of my black mind. When someone explains it to me and I understand these are the command forms and I can conjugate from there, then I actually appreciate that. And I will use them. But many people here refuse to actually try to explain it to me. The funny thing is most bilingual people here would not do it because not that they didn't want to help, but because they were busy. They got jobs. You know how it is. Bilingual people are in demand. They generally have some kind of employment, some job. If it doesn't pay them anything, it still takes their time. So I didn't expect them to have that much time. But the people that would offer to teach me Arabic couldn't speak any English at all. So we had no way to bridge the gap in the beginning. So I had to eventually begin to learn from other professors during our off time. And that's how I picked up as much as I have picked up. And even then, I have a problem explaining to some of them, listen, you're going to have to speak at a medium or slow speed for me to get it because sometimes the words run together. And if you speak quickly, you may not pronounce a particular letter, and I may miss that letter and miss the whole entire meaning because, as you all say, one letter changes the meaning. And that's why I had issues. If you think that I'm harsh on Kuwaitis and the Saudis, and let's see who's the closer one, the Bahrainis as an example. If you think I'm hard on them, you should hear me go off on Egyptians. I got no respect for their dialect. I don't interfere when they're talking to each other. I don't blame them. When they turn to me and they start speaking in that dialect, I shut them down. First, I say, I don't speak the Egyptian dialect. I don't understand you, but I speak Fusha. If you say it slowly in Fusha, I may understand. And when they start with that Mafi Kilam shit, I get on the ass. I say to him, okay, excuse me, Mr. Masri, I just told you I don't speak Egyptian. And I'm calling it another language intentionally. Now you're speaking to me in some broken Arabic that doesn't make sense. The grammar is confusing. If you cannot say it in Fusa and you can't say it in English, then don't worry about it. I'll wait for a translator. Now, what's it going to be? That's why I show my rancor, because them niggas don't care who's listening. They're inconsiderate of non-Egyptians when they speak Arabic. That's rude. See, when I speak English to someone whose first language is Arabic, I know that I need to use the English of a teacher. I can't use the specifically Southern Gulf Coast African American dialect with which I grew up in my private life. It's not fair to them for me to expect that. If I'm going to use it, I need to tell them that this is what it means, and I still have to explain it in formal textbook English, and it's not the listener's fault. So I'm considerate of what others go through when they're learning another language. You say they don't have to accommodate me in their own country? Excuse me, sir. They can speak their own language properly. And if they can slow down a bit, I'll probably grasp most of it. And if I don't understand something, I'll tell them honestly, listen, you explained it well. I just don't know that particular word, and I'll look for the translation to understand it better. Sorry about that. You did what you could. If they let me finish the sentence. But one thing about Arabs, Mr. Rawan, and you know this is true, is that just like black people, you all don't let people finish their sentences. You interrupt each other a lot. And we do the same thing. This is a bad habit that both of us have. And this does also serve to make communication even more difficult, aside from just the language and vocabulary. Hell, we can barely finish stuff. They interrupt me, I start interrupting them. Before you know it, we're just cutting each other off. Now, Rawan, you said the way I talk about my students is disgusting and vindictive. Nigga, I'm disgusted. And it is vindictive. I specified that I'm talking about students in the first quarter of the school year and this quarter that I'm now finishing. I also specified in several cases, in several videos, that the cheating problem has gone way down within the last 4 years, even within the last 3 years, that it is dramatically reduced in this country. I've even seen some of the Saudi students from across the border that come here to learn because they still live here. I've even seen them begin to cheat less and less and less. Each new crop of students coming in is better than the last. I specified that I was unlucky to have bad classes the first quarter and then this quarter. And guess what happened, Rawan? A few minutes before I saw your comment, I just got through administering the speaking test to students. I forgot how many of them copied their presentations from websites and from the textbook. Think about this. At least 4 copied from the textbook. I've been teaching the textbook for years. If you read from a page in a textbook, I'm going to recognize it. And 4 of them who actually attended class and heard me give instructions had the nerve to copy and plagiarize out of the textbook for their speaking test instead of putting together their own presentation. Cheating is a serious problem amongst them. It used to be throughout the Gulf, sir. And everybody knows it. You may not like me saying it, but it has to be said. However, fortunately, because of whatever the case is, probably partially, at least partially due to Western teachers disclosing this problem when they would finish their contracts, somewhere down the line, governments felt pressure. And they applied the pressure to the educational system and the students. And the cheating in the universities went down drastically. This is an improvement. I gave due credit to the governments and populations for this, sir. I also said I wound up with some classes that were still bad. And yes, I don't talk bad about my students because they don't speak English like me. I talk bad about them specifically, and I've specified this before many times. I talk bad about them specifically when they repeat the same mistakes after I've explained it to them and when they cheat. I would talk bad about anybody. I talk bad about myself when I do dumb stuff like that. You think I'm going to let them off the hook? It doesn't matter their nationality, sir. I've talked bad about black students back in the States that I taught, Latin American students back in the States I've taught. I didn't teach white students except on 2 occasions. You know why? School systems don't see fit to put black male teachers in front of white students in most cases. It's not that we can't do it, it's that they just don't think we can, or they know that the parents are going to complain about a black heterosexual male teacher teaching their little white kids anything. They know this will happen. So I don't have much experience teaching white kids. The bit of experience I have was teaching white or half-white Muslim kids, and that was pretty good. That wasn't a problem. I remember one with a Pakistani father and a Cajun, a white Caucasian Cajun mother from Louisiana. I remember him. He was actually one of the best behaved students I had in the Muslim school. One of the best ones. He and I, we barely spoke, but we got along well, and his character was superb. I didn't have to talk bad about him. I had to talk bad about one kid from Somalia, another one from Ethiopia, another one from Libya, one from Pakistan. No, two from Pakistan. And sometimes one from India. Those are the only ones I ever had to say anything bad about to the administrators, not just talking bad about them to everybody else, but specifically to the administrators, because we had to deal with their discipline issues. If I had had to talk bad about the half-white kid, I would have, but I never had to. When I did have white students in the other non-Muslim schools, the public schools in which I taught, they were silent. As a matter of fact, there was only one. And one time he did talk and he said, "I'm not white, I'm German." He was a middle school kid. And that's one thing I remember hearing him say. He didn't talk in class that much unless someone spoke to him first. I get on anybody, sir, and right now I have a right to be disappointed in what I've seen because I'm dealing with exclusively Muslim students who think that cheating is normal. And most students in period nowadays don't come in with this attitude. But don't sit up here and think that I'm just being nasty and vindictive. No, I talk about any student that cheats. I said in a previous recording less than a week ago that cheating is on the increase in China, in India. I already said this, while it's decreasing here. So this is becoming a better place to work as long as the administrators don't keep on sticking me with the worst classes, which they've been doing. I also said, sir, that another reason I have a right to talk bad about them is because they gang up on honest teachers and lie. I told the students in the beginning, you will not cheat and still get marks for what you cheat on. If you copy, that's a 0 right off the bat. That's what the administrators told us. I told my students right off the bat, it's not okay to copy. I don't care how much you copied in high school. That's not okay. I'm letting you know now the first day. It's better to make your own mistakes than it is to copy someone else's perfect work, turn it in, get caught, and get a 0. I explained this. So what am I supposed to say when they come in and still copy and cheat, sir? And then when I tell them, I found the website from which you copied. No, I didn't copy. The website has the exact same thing that you said, or the same thing that you wrote. Man, fit the guck out my face with that short bit. You see, I owe no apologies except for the mistakes I made in Arabic, which were based on what some people were telling me, and they weren't really taking the time to tell me. They weren't even taking the time to let me ask the questions fully. Not because they're mean, but because they just have this bad habit, similar to my own people. Actually worse, the interruptions are worse. We got other bad habits. But the habit that Arabs have that's worse than is even worse amongst Arabs than it is amongst our people is the constant interruption. I'm sorry, bro, but that's the truth of the matter. I've seen how y'all talk to each other. It is very similar to how we talk to each other, except you all do even more interruption because nobody ever says, "Let me finish." I mean, y'all are more likely, when you get into an argument with each other, you're more likely to break out into a fist fight than even our men. I've been to a popular grocery store. It's popular throughout the Gulf. Look, you've heard of that. Been there. I don't go anymore. It's a little too far from where I live now, but I've been there before. I remember going there 3 weekends in a row. 3 weekends in a row, and people were about to fight. Grown men had to be pulled apart. Grown men taking their gauze off, about to hit each other with it until people came in and separated them. What you expect me to say? Well, they're human. You're right. I've seen people about to fight in different parts of the world, although not nearly as often as I've seen them either in the U.S. or here. However, and here I rarely see that. So that's why I was surprised to go 3 weekends in a row to one place and see them about to fight. I don't know what was going on, but the thing is that, again, what's more important to understand is that everybody's got bad habits, but don't expect me to overlook the ones that actually will affect the lives of others. And where I work right now, honest teachers are always having to defend themselves from false accusations by students, not because they're doing something wrong, but because they're being honest. And this is not even because most of the students are doing this. We have a minority of students that are launching the majority of complaints about the teachers, saying things that aren't true, pretending to misunderstand things we've said so that they can complain, pretending like they didn't understand when in fact they've got bilingual classmates that are translating everything for them in private WhatsApp groups, which we have recently discovered and can now show. There is no room for you to correct me about my attitude towards the dishonest students and the non-serious and lazy students in front of whom they have thrown my black ass twice. There's no room to correct me about that. Yeah, you can correct me about the Arabic, and I really do appreciate it. I'm going to save that and memorize that and use it correctly, practice it when people allow me. But when it comes to the attitude, sir, I've already expressed a good attitude towards the ones that are honest. Whether they are fluent or not, the ones that are honest make the effort and show some improvement. I've already done that. I've already told my audience multiple times about how the problem with the cheating and the academic dishonesty is sharply decreasing and rapidly so. I've already done that. But you see, I had to illustrate something, and I was going to do another recording, but I can do that in this one. I can make the same point in this recording right now to you. See, my people, sir, are going through not only a war with white supremacy, but your people have looked white supremacy in the face and given up. It didn't even fight this battle. Yeah, I said your people. It sounds like I'm talking down to Arabs, right? It's not because I hate y'all. Nobody's hospitality exceeds yours. I know that Arabs are some of the safest people to live around black folks in general. I understand that in general because I'm aware of the exceptions too. I know about Libya, and I'm not going to ignore it, but I don't think you're Libyan, and I'm not going to blame you for what Libyans are doing. I know Arabs are different, just like Africans are different. So I'm not willing to oppress you, sir. However, I understand that in general, if black folks have to live with non-black people, the second safest people in the world for us to live around are going to be specifically Gulf Arabs and Iraqis because they don't oppress us. Ironically, it is North African Arabs who have some of the nastiest attitudes towards us while they're on our continent. I'm aware of this. So in the Gulf, we're safe. Your cops don't pull us over for being black. I'm aware of that too. The only major barrier between non-black Arabs and black Arabs is we don't marry, or rather the races don't marry each other. I'm aware of that too, and I don't mind that. But see, y'all still, and I mean even Gulf Arabs, have not confronted white supremacy adequately, and here's why I say it. It is not because of any violence, and I'm aware of Arabs who stood with black folks during the Black Lives Matter protests after George Floyd. So this is why I would stand with Arabs against Israeli occupation and against the discrimination they go through from white folks. I would do that, but there's still some discrimination that Arabs have against black folks, and I'm not going to let this slide. I'm saying this for a reason. You're saying, well, what does this have to do with that? Here's what it has to do with that. While you're trying to correct me because I won't let lazy students go past, you actually need to go back and correct your own people about their attitudes and views regarding race and color. The lack of violent oppression does not mean that your people don't need correction. And I, for one, don't think that you hate black folks or even look down on us. So I think that you have the moral standing necessary to go back and tell other Arabic speakers, stop calling them abid, stop calling them slaves. Don't even call them ugly. Don't even start with that. Change the vocabulary. Change the idea of the abnormality of blackness, or challenge that. And matter of fact, challenge the Arabs' idea of the normality of whiteness. And we can talk. I'm not the enemy. I'm not the enemy to your people. I never was. But that being said, sir, even though I'm not the enemy to your people, that does not mean that I have to sit there and be patient with the shortcomings of anybody, my people, yours, or anyone else's. However, one of the major differences is that, see, you all love to preach. Let's be honest, everybody knows this. Y'all love to preach. You go into the massage in North America, anywhere else for that matter. And as it's understood, when you go into these massages in North America or anywhere else, generally speaking, most people who speak Arabic as a first language will say, I know the Quran, it's my language. In other words, refuting correction from other people. And this is evident when some of us say not to call us abid, or to treat us differently, even in the marriage market for that matter. And we start to say, well, even this assumption of white normality and black abnormality is an anathematic to Tawheed and to what Allah revealed. Many times the first language Arabic speaker will say, well, I know the Quran, it's in my language. And many times they will, I wouldn't say assume the position of the imam, but we know how it is that many will behave. That's why you almost never have, outside of Michigan, you almost never have a masjid that is mostly Arabs, because everyone's the imam. Now, in Michigan, I understand that can happen, but outside of there, pretty much it's got to be that Arabs are dispersed amongst non-Arab massages predominantly. That's not a bad thing, again, as long as it's not for a bad reason, but from everybody else's understanding, it's for a bad reason, because they don't listen to each other even. So while you all are offering these corrections, sometimes there's a time to correct you all. And as soon as somebody starts doing it, you all want to interrupt and then counter with correct statements, but they're said for the wrong reasons. Like when we correct you all about the views of race and color, which you may not even be guilty of. But when we correct your people about it, we get interrupted with, Bilal was black, khalas. And Muhammad said in his last sermon, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that the Arab and the non-Arab are no better than each other, and the white and the black are no better than each other, and we're all abidullah, we're all slaves of God. All these statements are true, but they're said for the wrong reasons. What your people are really saying to us is not so much, okay, I ucked fuck with my language and my choice of words and my subconscious racism and pro-whiteness and anti-blackness. What they are saying, sir, is, God damn it, don't fight me back on this. Stop talking about it. Just let me say that y'all are slaves, and let me say that whites are better looking than you all categorically, by default, automatically, and don't challenge me. That's what we hear, and we have every right to be offended. Also, here's the other thing, why I get on my students about this stuff. You see, the students who do the most cheating and who repeat the same mistakes the most in English, if they even are willing to learn a sentence of it, are the ones who preach to us the most about religion. I don't know why. I don't know what the link is. I don't fivaguk what it is. You see, years ago, when I first got to this particular town, this was 2017, this was exactly 4 years ago about this time of year. We were about to finish out the school year for 2016-2017. I walked into a classroom to supervise an exam, and there were 8 students cheating when I first walked in. And I said to the students that were cheating, you know what? If you ever ask me again why my parents aren't Muslim like I am, this is what I have to say to you. Because, see, my parents know about the problems of cheating here. They know about the way you view race and color, and they know about the way you view academics, and that you think cheating is okay in general. I'm talking to the 8 of you that are doing this. Don't ask me ever again. Don't ask any of the professors here ever again why their family's not Muslim if they are. Don't ask a non-Muslim professor why they're not Muslim, because they ask me, the non-Muslim professors come and ask me and other Muslim professors, if these kids are praying 5 times a day and even trying to interrupt the class to go pray, then why can't they take a test without cheating? And why are they the same students? This is legitimate, sir. And this is something that's going to have to be discussed. And you know what? Frankly, as I've said, this problem is generally vanishing, generally. But since I'm in front of a classroom full of kids who continue to do this, they haven't changed in the past 4 years like their comrades have. Of course, I have to say, well, this is my experience now. When it wasn't like this previous quarters, I said I generally have a good one. But see, there's a reason I recorded about that. I was talking about language. Well, now I was going to record about something else, and then I saw your comment. So here's the thing about the way that my particular students, notice, I'm not saying Saudi or Kuwaiti or Bahraini or Emirati or Omani students are acting overall. I'm talking specifically about my students that I got this quarter and the bad ones I had the first quarter. There's something about them. When anyone behaves, when a majority of any class behaves like they are doing, meaning they insist on beating the system and getting what they didn't earn. They don't just want what they don't earn, because we're human, we all do, but they insist, they plan, and they demand to take what they don't earn and refuse to earn it. Then they are at war with you. Sir, my students are at war with me and with any other honest teacher that they get. They are at war. And I was going to use that as an example to illustrate why it was, because they believe that what they're doing is okay. Because, you know, the educational system is for the kuffars, for the disbelievers. They actually associate education with disbelievers. Think about that. And I was going to say that's a similar mindset to what some of our people in the hood have. Associating education with white folks and selling out. But I was also going to say, when you have a system like this and you have a behavior like this from a majority of a class, they're at war with you. It's the same thing when you're dealing with African American and other westernized black women who look at black men and they say, not just I want a high value man without being a high value woman, but they say, I'm going to get the high value man and I refuse to be a high value woman. In other words, he has to be Superman and I will remain Lois Lame. Not even Lois Lane with an N as in Nancy, but Lois Lame with an M as in Mary. I insist on this. I will cheat the system. I will beat the system. I will get unfair advantages at every turn, and I will accept nothing less. And if I don't get it, I will resort to violence. That's what these women are saying about us. And I was going to record this and say to black men, the same way you can tell that these students are in a war administratively to cheat the whole system, the Western black woman is in a war with you romantically and sexually to cheat the whole market. That's why they act as a sexual labor union like they do. They refuse to be the good wives that other women don't mind being, or may not mind being if they're not too westernized. They just refuse anything that is good for you, they refuse. They are not being this difficult accidentally. They're this difficult intentionally. Just like when I get these classes of bad students that were rejected by other teachers, which is why I was put in front of them. They're not being as difficult as they are accidentally. It's not just because English is difficult for them. No, I make it easy. They're doing that. They're difficult because they just simply, they're doing that intentionally because they think it's cool and cute and funny. Because they are no different from the ones we had 4 years ago when 80% of them thought that cheating was halal because English is a language of the kuffar. And that's exactly what some of them told us. That's where I got it from. That's what some of them said. Most of them said they heard that a sheikh said that, but they didn't believe it. A lot of students would say, I don't believe it, but I've heard it. Yeah, that some sheikh said this a long time ago. Most would say that. But there were others that would say, no, a sheikh said it. It's halal. We can do that. Because you're trying to teach us the language of the kuffar. It's not the language of the Quran. And I would say to them, if I speak to you in the language of the Quran, are you going to answer me in that? Or are you going to answer me in your dialect, which is understandable. At least it has its rules of grammar. Or are you going to answer me in Indian Arabic, what you call Indian Arabic, with broken grammar that doesn't make sense and is confusing? No, bro. I'm not your enemy, Rawan. But before you correct me, you got to go back to your own folks, even other nationalities that speak the same language as you, different dialects, of course. I accept your correction about the language. It was an honest mistake. But don't sit here and tell me the way I talk about them is disgusting and vindictive. I've given credit to the good students. I've given credit to most students because they've changed in the last 4 years. And I've given discredit to the ones of them that sat up here and cheated. They cheated today, just less than an hour before I saw your comment. And thought it's okay. I mean, they knew that we don't allow cheating in the system, but they think it's just okay to do. Now, you see, I'm going to say this about some of the ghettoest, most poorly academic performing kids back in my hometown, and they were all African American. When I taught for a semester back in my childhood hometown, all my students, 100%, were African American, no exceptions. There was not one Latin American, and there were no Caucasian students at the school. There wasn't one. So when I taught these 6th and 7th graders, they were on medicines, all sorts of things. Some of them were supposed to have been in 9th grade and they were in 7th, things like that. But get this. One thing they weren't doing was cheating. That wasn't it. They couldn't follow directions, or they wouldn't. But see, they weren't necessarily saying, well, I'm going to go on to the 8th grade without learning even 6th grade material. That's not what they were doing. See, what they would do is they just simply wouldn't care enough. So if they failed, they failed. They didn't care. They didn't talk during the test to cheat. They talked during the test because they were going to talk at any point. What they were not doing was at war. They were not at war with us to beat the system. Now, would they lie on us? Yes. Some of them did try that with me. They do this with every teacher. In that regard, they were at war. But what they were not doing was sitting up here cheating on every single test and then lying because we didn't let them cheat. Vastly different, sir. So y'all have a major house to clean. Because at least my students would just take an F if that's what they got. If they got an F, they got an F. One thing they weren't trying to do was trying to break the whole system just for them to get exactly what they did not deserve. Even when they were lying on teachers to get teachers in trouble for things we didn't do. I hope this helps you, sir. I hope this helps your people, actually. Those from your country and those from other countries that speak the same language, different dialects. I don't think it will, and that's not your fault. I just don't think they'll listen to you. But it's a conversation y'all are going to have before any one of you can ever point a finger at one of us ever again about anything outside of honest mistakes we might make in Arabic. I hope it helps, sir. I mean that from the bottom of my black heart. Thanks for listening. Black heart, black mind, blackout. Assalamu alaikum. And black heterosexual non-select male power just because they don't like it. And black patriarchy until extinction or judgment day.